Check, check. Hey everybody, Ty here, Small Acre Hunting. I know 3 weeks in a row, don't get used to this. Hopefully I can keep up a good flow going though. Today's episode, we're going to talk specifically, and kind of the main topic is going to be establishing clover plots and why this time of the year may not be the time that everybody thinks it is to do that. That and a little bit more on this episode of the Small Acre Hunting Podcast.
You are listening to the Small Acre Hunting Podcast, the hunting podcast that is free of advertisements, bought and paid for opinions, and minutes of sponsorships. If that's what you want, there's a plethora of other podcasts out there. Here, we're going to talk openly, we're going to talk honestly, and we're going to live in the real world, free of sponsorships and paid for advertisements and opinions that are governed and dictated by them. That sounds interesting. Stay tuned for this episode of the Small Acre Hunting Podcast.
Welcome. It is 3 weeks in a row. I'm not sure the last time I've actually accomplished that. Life has kind of slowed down, allowed me to do this a little bit more. It's going to pick up. It's not something that's going to probably stay to this point, but hopefully I can continue to produce a lot more content. I'm really enjoying it. I've had a lot of good conversations triggered by the last 2 episodes. If you haven't heard those, go ahead and look on back, check them out. They're on YouTube now. Also, all major podcast streaming sources, whatever you listen to podcasts on, it's most likely there. So thank you for listening. Thank you for tuning in. Today's episode, we're going to focus, the brunt of the conversation is going to be about clover plots, because that's one of the most popular conversations right now that a lot of people are having. A lot of people are emailing me in or messaging me, hey Ty, how do I get clover plots established? I want to try to get this section going as soon as possible and things of that nature. So let's talk about a couple different things. A lot of people this time of the year are really focusing on frost seeding. Now, frost seeding is a great way to get clover. In my opinion, it's a great way to get clover plots started if there's already something there. If there's a leftover plot, especially if that leftover plot has cereal rye or cereal wheat, one of those 2 grains or both that are going to green up in the spring, provide a nurse crop for that clover. But clover in the spring, that's brand new, is facing a massive uphill battle, because as things begin to green up, deer are going to annihilate it, and young clover just cannot take the browse pressure. If those deer start nipping the really small, young, brand new growth of clover, the clover just isn't going to be able to establish, and it's not going to make it. It has a shot. I've established a lot of clover plots. They don't always do amazing. It's usually that second year, but I have frost seeded into sections of leftover food plots with somewhat decent success. The one thing I would say is, let's say you had a bean plot this last year and then you overseeded brassicas into it. And now you're thinking, I want to make that into a clover plot. It's not, it is worth frost seeding into that. You're not going to have any regrowth. Yes, brassicas will kind of try to regrow sometimes. They seed out and things of that nature. But the clover is going to be the predominant thing there. What I would do is, if you frost seed clover, once temps start getting into those 30s, 40s, where maybe you start having some green up, go in there with some cereal rye and spread that on that clover plot to just try to introduce another item growing there that will hopefully act as a nurse crop for that clover. I have long held the belief that the fall is the best time to get clover plots. If you really want to have a successful thick stand of clover, the best time to establish it and start that process is actually in the fall. I am a huge advocate and fan of a cereal grain based plot in the fall. So I'm going to throw rye, wheat, oats. I'll throw at least 50. A lot of the times I don't do wheat just because it's not always available local, but I always can get oats and I always can get rye. And if I'm throwing, I'm usually going to do a 2-to-1 ratio or a 1-to-1 at most. I never go over 1-to-1 with the oats, just because the oats never really survive here. They're not going to make it through the winter, but they're an incredible attractant when they're young. They're much more palatable, and I've observed deer hit it better than rye, but they will hit the rye later because the oats just, if any of it still exists, when the snow starts flying and the cold temperatures start coming, the oats just are gone. They either die back or the deer already ate them. And then the cereal rye becomes a massive attraction. The powerful thing about the winter cereal rye is the fact that it's one of the first things to green up and start growing in the spring. The turkeys love it, the deer love it. Pretty much any animal that'll eat a plant is going to eat that cereal rye in the spring. But if you have a plot that has a lot of cereal grains, you could mix in, radishes grow surprisingly well. They're just not going to get massive. Oats and radishes, I've had really good luck. The radishes, that seems to be a good pairing. So you can sprinkle some brassicas in there. I know some guys that will throw some peas in there in the fall, especially if you can't get a hold of oats. Young peas are another pretty good attraction into those plots in the fall. And I will seed the clover. Now, let's say you have a good mix of clover seed. Let me actually, sorry, I'm trying to type and think and it's not working well for me. A really good clover mix is going to probably call for anywhere from 5 to 7 pounds per acre. Some as high as 10, depending on the clover types. But if you've got like a 7 or 8 pound bag of clover mix, and there might be chicory mixed in there as well, we've got to start learning how to read seed tags, because that's a pivotal conversation point in this. But let's go back and first discuss just kind of my process of things. I'm going to plant my clover, whatever high quality clover mix I've decided, either one that I've purchased from a company or I've bought myself and made from a local ag store, or maybe I got onto Hancock Seed or another seed place online and just bought the clover types I want. I'm going to plant that in the fall. I might go a little bit lighter than the seed tag says. So, the 10 pound bag from Real World, as example, will plant 1 acre. I might do 70% of that bag at the rate and save the final 30%. And I'll actually maybe boost it a little bit. My plots are rarely an acre. So let's say I got a 3/4 of an acre plot and I've got that 10 pound bag. I'm probably going to plant maybe half of it, maybe 60% of it, so 6 pounds, in the fall with that cereal grain blend with maybe some brassicas mixed in, just a dusting of brassicas. We're not talking about a lot. And then I'm going to come back and I'm going to frost seed into that plot right now in February, March. We want that heaving of the soil where things are freezing and thawing, and it's going to set that clover seed. And don't worry about the seed. It is designed to handle that. It actually encourages and assists in the germination process, breaks down that really hard seed that it is and allows it to germinate then once the temperatures reach the right levels. And that's how I will establish a clover plot, and it'll beat any clover plot that any other way that I've done. I've tried to establish clover plots in the spring. They never turn out as well because it's like right when that clover's starting to fire on all cylinders, typically the summer heat kicks in. And that clover is not quite thick enough yet to keep the soil cool, which keeps its root system cooler and allows it to grow better. It doesn't hold moisture in the soil as well because, again, it hasn't canopied out. It hasn't been allowed to do that, which is another reason why having some type of nurse crop with it. I know some people will use buckwheat. Buckwheat's getting really expensive lately. That's why I still think cereal rye is like the all-encompassing assister when it comes to setting up plots and having green in your plots. Oats as well in there will work just fine. But everybody who's out there like, I'm going to frost seed to establish a clover plot. If the ground was prepped or it's a leftover food plot, yes, it's possible. It is very possible. Just keep your expectations, and we've talked about it. One of the biggest hurdles that we as land managers have to accept is the fact that we have to have proper expectations, and we have to adjust them based on our property type, based on our location, based on our neighbors. That goes from everything from harvesting decisions, quality of deer decisions, what the ceiling is for the property. Well, our food plots also have a ceiling, and if you're trying to establish a new clover plot right in the spring on unprepped soil and such like that, you're probably climbing an uphill battle unless you get Mother Nature to cooperate. It's a tough thing to get going, but once you do, clover is one of the easiest things to take care of, and that's why I will always have clover on my property, just because it is a pretty easily controlled and cared for plot. I've gotten really lazy lately. I don't do a lot of chemical treatment on my clover. It's been over 2 years. I think we're going on 3 years on the one that I haven't sprayed chemicals on. I've just kind of mowed it, and you can really tell this year I'm going to have to try to salvage it. I'm going to have to go in there with some clethodim, some grass selective herbicide, and spray treat it if I want the clover to stay. It should bounce back pretty easy. I'll overseed it a little bit. I may frost seed into it a little bit this year. That way then if I can set the grass back while that clover is trying to grow underneath all the frost seeded clover, it'll thicken that plot right back up. But it's been an incredible stand. Got a couple other locations that I've frost seeded just into grass and then mowed and sprayed clethodim on that the following spring. The clover's really thin, so I'm gonna try to probably frost seed into that some, and or I'll wait until the spring and I'll do the oats, rye, and some clover mix into it. A little trick that we've done in the past is if a clover plot's getting a little thin, we'll set our disc to just barely cut and scratch the surface, and then we'll seed over that, because clover is surprisingly hardy. I've turned over a clover plot before with a disc, and we don't ever rip really deep, but we've said, hey, we're gonna put brassica plot in this year, and it was clover for years, and we'll turn that over a little bit. The disc will be going down 3 to 4 inches, and by that fall we've got half the plot is covered in clover still, because those roots didn't really die. It's somewhat gly resistant, some clover, so it's just something to keep in mind. But the biggest thing is understanding that if you really want to establish the best clover plot, you got to do it in the fall, and you got to do it properly. That's my opinion. Other guys may disagree with me. If you've got a drill and you got good weather, yeah, you can establish anything if you can do that. But broadcasting clover and such, do yourself a favor and don't have to overseed and buy more seed. Once your spring attempt is not what you desired and you've got to overdo it then in the fall, or replant it, or really go to town the next full year later and frost seed over it. But let's talk about just clover mixes in general. There's a lot of ads that I'm seeing online for clover mixes and conversations, and there's a lot of ignorance out there, and there's a lot of companies out there that are pretending like they have this amazing product and they're going to help you establish a clover plot, and then all they have in them is Berseem, Balanza, Ball, Arrowleaf, Crimson. Now I'm not saying those are bad seeds. I love Crimson clover. It's a pretty attractive clover, but the problem is all those that I just listed, they're the cheapest of the cheap. They're annual clovers. They're 1 year and done. You'll get some reseeding on Crimson. On light winter years, I've noticed Crimson really can reseed itself, but never more than, I've probably never seen it more than 30% reseed rate. Like, if I had 100 plants, crimson clover plants in an area, I never saw more than 30 come back. And that's got to be a light winter. Normally I don't see any, or I see 1 or 2 in a plot come back. That's important because I have literally been at shows and looked through, because I'm a seed dork or nerd or however you want to call it. At shows, when there's food plot companies that I'm not familiar with, or even ones that I've met or talked to the people for, I like to always check back into their plots, seeds, and look at their seed tags, because I've witnessed companies that they have really good mixes, but they're not selling enough product, and they begin to erode their product's quality because their margin, they're just not going to survive because they're not moving enough product, and it's expensive to have good product. And if you just don't have a good marketing team, or you don't get lined up with people that can produce clientele, you either got to close up shop or accept that you're going to lose money or try to break even, or you lower your costs. And one of the easiest way when it comes to clover mixes is 2 things: buy a really cheap seed and introduce inert matter and wasteful seed coatings. I remember there was one company, and I've shared this story before, but their 10-pound bag of clover seed was 4.9 pounds of actual seed, I think it was when I calculated it out. Just an excessive amount of inert matter, excessive amount of seed coating. And then that 4.9 pounds, if I remember right, I think that was, because about 40% or 35% of that blend was actually either biannual or perennial clover. There was a lot of medium red in it, if I remember right. And medium red has a decent chance of reseeding itself, but it's really a 2-year clover. And then you got to hope your perennials take over, your Ladinos, your white, your Dutch, Durana, Curry, or however you say it. But Ladino and white and Dutch are kind of the 3 main ones that you're going to see. Those are the most popular perennials. Those can live 10 years or more on a good site with good weather and Mother Nature taking care of the place and things not encroaching upon it and taking over. Clover can last a really long time. But I remember I brought that up to the seed plot people there, or the food plot people there. I was talking to a guy, and he was asking what I was doing, and I was going through the tag and everything. And when they overheard me telling this guy what my observations were, they kicked me out of their booth. They didn't even want to have a conversation. It was laughable at best. But how many of you out there are reading the seed tags, the ingredients, and actually trying to discern them? When you go out and you want to buy a good quality mix of clover, I recommend chicory being involved in it. I supplement my mix even with more chicory. I really like a lot of chicory because I've just observed that my deer, at least, the chicory's gone by mid-November. There's a point at some point in middle of October where a switch flips and they hone in on that chicory more than anything on my property, it seems. So, I love Real World Clover Chicory blend. I supplement it with chicory. I actually needed to get some more, so I got some just chicory seed from Hancock Seed. I'm not a big fan of it because it's got 50% inert matter. The last time I ordered from them, that was not the case, and I made the mistake of not checking. And online, I don't know if they had it available, but I'm going to have to talk to my local ag store and see if they can get some chicory seed, and I want to see if it's better quality. The problem with a lot of the seed producers and even companies that are online suppliers is that inert matter, that wasteful inert matter, and that wasteful seed coatings that they overdo. So basically, I've got a 5-pound bag, but it's only 2.5 pounds of chicory. Now that's fine because the recommended seed rate is like 5 pounds an acre of this stuff, which really means 2.5 pounds of actual chicory seed. So it'll be great for supplementation purposes into my clover areas, and I may even throw some in some brassica plots or whatever, but chicory will come up each year. It's a perennial as well. But you got to pay attention to your seed tags. Stop buying crap, as I used to say. I think one of the viral videos of the past of mine, and it's actually, I think, what started Terry Peer and I communicating way back when, was I made a video, Don't Buy Crap, and it was all about seed tags and learning to read it. You know, check the germination rate, check the test date. Make sure you're not buying 2-year-old seed. There are a lot of companies out there that, it's funny, they will reuse seed and they'll retest it, and as long as their test date and their germination rate might be lower, but their test date is now 2024 and they're selling the seed in 25. But the funny thing was, it had a higher germination rate when they sold it in 24 because it was actually 23 seed, and now it's 2-year-old seed and it just has a lower germination rate. I know this is a lot to remember, but it's really just about buying quality. If you really want to get a clover plot going, timing is everything. Using nurse crops, plant in the fall, supplemental frost seed in the spring, and you should be having a gangbuster clover plot taken over. I've never had a drill to establish any of that, but timing is the first part, and then high quality seed is the second part. Everybody knows I typically use real world wildlife products. That does not mean you have to. There are a lot of good quality seeds out there. There's even a lot of ag stores you can go in and just be like, I need some clover. And they might have just bulk bags of Ladino that you can just say, oh, I'll take 4 pounds of that. Do you have anything else? Yeah, we got medium, we got some red. Okay, I'll take 3 pounds of that. And you can walk out. I know some of you aren't familiar enough or want to take the time to learn, you know, what's a biannual, what's a perennial, what clovers you should get, and all this stuff. So you want to buy from a company. All I ask you to do is make sure it's a reputable company, and make sure that it's high quality. I would recommend making sure the man or the person or the people behind the high quality mix is also a high quality individual, because there's a lot of people out there that are not, but yet they have good products. So won't get on my soapbox too much about that, but that's what we got going on at my place. Is some clover overseeding, frost seeding that's going to occur here fairly soon. I typically wait until the end of February. Being in northern Indiana, I can still experience some really big freezes. And to be honest, the weather really has only been above freezing maybe once or twice in the last couple weeks for any extended amount of time. We might get up to it or creep right to it in midday, but not enough for a thaw to happen or anything like that on the ground. You know, I think I could ramble on and we could talk about other topics, but I think that's pretty much what I want to do. So in closing, what I want to do is circle back, and I'll put the text up on the screen of, I think it's really important that we do at least know what are the 1-year annual clovers, what are considered the biannual clovers, the 2-year clovers, and then what are the 5+ year type clovers, the clovers that can live under the right conditions for years and years and years. So if you're listening to this podcast, maybe you write these down. If you want, you can slide over to the YouTube, Small Acre Hunting on YouTube, and you can fast forward to this part of the podcast and you can see the text. But so the 1-year clovers, that again, these are going to be the less expensive. These are going to be the faster growing clovers. So these are oftentimes used in those multiple seed yearly mixes. They're really good for that. They're great at soil building because of how quick they act. They will fixate some nitrogen. So I'm not saying these are bad, but if I want to establish a clover plot, I can't have a large majority of my mix be these seed types. These are crimson clover, berseem, balanza, arrowleaf, and I think ball. I think that would round out the 5 that you're most likely to run across. Then you have your biannual clovers, which under good conditions, they're going to live 2 years. Their cycle's going to run out then. You got your medium reds. You got your mammoth reds. You got your yellow sweet, which I've never really had I've never observed great things with yellow sweet. I know some guys swear by it. And you know what? If your deer love it, listen to them, try to keep yellow sweet mixed in. That's another thing, if you get a clover plot established and it's going well, I know guys that if they're Ladino and they're white or they're Dutch, Durana are going really good, they're going to focus on frost seeding more medium reds, more mammoth reds, more yellow sweet, more Alsike. Like they're going to focus on frost seeding those shorter lived clovers to help thicken it up each year and things like that. I think that's a good tactic. I've never done that myself. It's a sound logic approach though to things. And I know a lot of guys that will wait until they won't necessarily frost seed it, but in that very, very early spring, right when things are starting to green up, they will essentially overseed. It may be frosting still, so maybe you can consider it frost seeding, but they'll just do crimson. Every year, they just buy bulk crimson and they frost seed or overseed crimson into their clover plots to act as that thickening agent to that plot. Again, I think that depends on the person, and I think it depends on your plot. If it's pretty healthy otherwise, and you don't necessarily need to fill in more voids with perennial clovers that are going to be there and sustain themselves and the plot itself, I think that's a good approach, and it's something you could consider. Medium red, mammoth red, yellow sweet, and Alsike are the main biannual or 2-year clovers that you're going to see. The perennials, I know a lot of people claim these are more attractive, and I do think in the long run, and I think they are. I don't know if that has to do with the fact that they typically are going to take a little bit longer to grow. So I don't know if their nutritional density because of the plant type is better. I have no idea, but it is something that can be observed in tissue samples and such. Different levels, crude proteins, things of that nature can be measurable, and they're typically better, not always. In the perennials, the multi-year clovers, these are going to be your Ladinos, these are going to be your whites, your Dutch, your Durana, your Cura, I don't know. Kura, I think is how it's spelled. I'll be sure to check before I throw it up on the screen. But those are more so, if you're wanting to establish a long-term clover plot, that needs to be the majority of your mix. And if it's not, you're dealing with an ignorant seed company, and they're either doing it out of choice, they're being ignorant out of choice because they care more about money than a good high-quality product, or they're just ignorant and they don't know no better, and they really shouldn't be in the seed company business. Like, they just shouldn't be. So little bit of a discussion today on clovers. I think it's something that you can circle back to when you specifically want to be reminded of how to establish clover. I recommend in the fall. I recommend at least 2 other plant types growing in there with it. It can be as simple as rye and oats. You can sprinkle in brassicas in there if you want. I would do a really light dusting. Most of my plots are 1/3 of an acre to 2/3 of an acre. And when I say dusting, I'm probably, if I do a 50-pound bag of oats, a 50-pound bag of rye, I'm probably going to do a pound and a half of brassicas. If I want a blend or whatever like that, it could be just radish seed. You guys have seen me buy 50-pound bags of daikon radishes and then use them for years and just kind of tweak it up a little bit, assuming that the germination is going to be less and less each year. You could do that and then plant your clover. And like I said earlier, if I'm doing it in the fall and I have these other plant types in there, I'm probably going to scale back to about 60-70% rate with that clover, and then I'm going to overseed in the early spring, late winter, and frost seeding the remaining portion of that clover plot. And then I'm going to kind of gauge it that spring, see how it's growing, check on it in the summer, and then in the fall, if I need to hit it with some cereal grains and maybe either annuals or perennial type clovers, I'll overseed it again in the fall during a good growing time frame. So hopefully this helps. Hopefully this was resourceful for some of you. Some of you, I'm preaching to the choir, you know about seed quality, you know about clovers, and you're already trying not to buy crap. Sometimes it's just better to buy high quality mixes, spend a little bit of extra money, but know that you're getting more seed for your money. You're not spreading inert matter, stuff that isn't going to even grow out into your plots, and then you're avoiding frustration later when it's not what it should be. So I think that's all I'm going to talk about on this episode. I am going to break down some stuff in coming episodes. I'll actually take you to the property. I shot some video. I'm going to edit it together today for next week's podcast, hopefully 4 weeks in a row. Who knows? We're on fire. Keep it going. I'm going to show you kind of what I'm doing and changing about at the plot locations in relativeness to both existing stand locations and how I'm moving, and I'm going to be putting up at least one stand, possibly two, and how I'm going to utilize a little bit of food manipulation around those stands, and also tree manipulation as far as hinging or encouraging early successional overgrowth. I may even, there's one spot that I'm debating really cutting it back, disturbing the soil with a disc, but then letting Mother Nature grow. I want high weeds. I want ragweed. I don't care if it's thistle. I want that stuff that's just going to grow up into a fallow field immediately in that first year, because I've noticed deer, one, they like to eat it, but it also creates kind of that structure for them to feel safe to move through. And I think it could be dynamite if I can get it to do what I envision in my head. So, which it probably won't, and then I'll be frustrated, but hey, got to try. All right, this is Ty. Again, thank you everybody who listens to the podcast, who has. Many of you have been with me from the very start. It means a lot. Again, no money, no sponsorships, no promotions. The growth of the podcast is literally in your hands. So if you like it, at least rate it, give it a good rating, share it with your friends, point people this direction. It means the world to me. That's it. God bless, and good luck out there.